Hello everybody, my name is Ray. Welcome to the Evangelical Dark Web. Today we're going to be talking about why no Christians can support Dr. Oz. So Dr. Oz is a Senate candidate in Pennsylvania, which is north of where I live. And this is a very interesting Senate primary, specifically one that has a television personality running against a very crowded field. So very Trump-like, as you know, from 2016. And Donald Trump has endorsed Dr. Oz. Dr. Oz is best known as a television personality. He is an Oprah doctor. That's really what he is. He's Oprah doctor, very new agey. And we're going to be talking about his record and why no conservative, no Christian can support his candidacy in Pennsylvania. And this is not just in the primary, but also the general election. So the case that we're going to be making in this video is that he is a Democrat. So it does not matter that he's running against a Democrat. If he and another Democrat are on the ballot in November, the Democrats have already won the seat. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And we're going to look no further than a few videos. We're going to first talk about the issue of abortion. We're going to talk about where he stands on that, and we're going to talk about where he kind of stands now, and that's what we're going to talk about first. And then we're going to move on to grooming children. We're going to talk about that issue. So with that said, don't forget to like the video. Also subscribe to the channel. It's the least you can do to support content like this. And this content is based on an article that's written on evangelicaldarkweb.org, written by my brother. So he gets a shout out. He's been on the live streams a bunch. So he wrote this article, which I tasked him to do, but we've already been doing coverage of the primary cycles for national races of interest throughout the country. So Pennsylvania was next on the list. And with Dr. Oz running, it was so bad that we need to go after him and certainly pump up the awareness that he is a bad and terrible candidate. He is a Democrat running as a Republican, and he cannot be more open about that. So let's go to the Breakfast Club, where he gave an interview in May of 2019. This was around the time that states were passing substantive abortion abolition legislation. This was a very good time for the pro-life movement because, you know, the March for Life wasn't doing anything for 40 plus years. So if you're not familiar with the Breakfast Club, it's probably because you're really white. So that's the show that he's on. So let's roll tape.
Now, what are your thoughts on Alabama and these
crazy.
anti-abortion laws that they're passing in Alabama? Well, that they've passed.
Is that healthy?
I'm really worried about it. I tell you, I've taken care of a lot of women who've had issues around childbirth. The problem with the law as it stands now, and I think the law was really only passed to generate a Supreme Court challenge, but most women don't know they're pregnant. It's 2 weeks past your last period when you have to decide by. Well,
Yeah.
I have people
That's
on the
6
show all the
weeks
time
out.
who never know they were pregnant, even when they were delivering.
Okay, 2 weeks past your last period or 2 weeks past when your period is due? I didn't catch that the first time I watched that clip, but he's okay, first of all, 2 weeks past your last period is typically when your ovulation kicks in. And by your, I mean a woman's ovulation kicks in, because men can't ovulate. So that's theoretically when ovulation takes place. 2 weeks past a late period, you should start asking questions. If your period's 2 weeks late and you had sex in the middle of the cycle, you should be asking questions. I don't understand the mentality of I don't know. Like, did a penis go inside you or what? Come on.
50% of women don't know they're pregnant when they're pregnant.
Jesus.
So you're asking women to decide.
That's never
almost
been my experience,
instantaneously
by the way.
if they're pregnant or not. And it's also banned in case of incest and rape. And so I don't quite get it as a doctor. And the other thing is this whole thing about heart beating.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are electrical changes at 6 weeks, but the heart's not beating. If you were to say, starting from when we can hear the heart, like when the heart's really doing something, that would be different. That's not 6 weeks though.
Right.
So if you can define life by a beating heart, then make it a beating heart, not little electrical changes in a cell that no one here would think about as a heart.
And what really concerns me is
Okay, this is why what he says as a doctor is retarded. What causes the heart to beat? Electrical impulses. Why do you think they use defibrillators to charge a stopped heart? Why do we go to use electricity to regenerate a stopped heart? Because that's what causes a heartbeat.
I feel like it's banning safe abortions because women, if they're determined to do something, it just won't be done safely. So if you're determined to get an abortion, which has happened in the past, it'll be done in a dangerous way and it could actually kill you.
It's, as a doctor, just putting my doctor hat on, it's big time concern because I went to medical school in Philadelphia and I saw women who'd had coat hanger events. I mean, they're really traumatic events that happened when they were younger, before Roe versus Wade, and many of them were harmed for life, emotionally discarding anyway.
Right.
And listen, I'm at a personal level, I wouldn't want anyone in my family to have an abortion. I told my kids this. I mean, I love the lives that they're creating so much that I personally wouldn't want it, but I don't want to interfere with everyone else's stuff because it's hard enough.
This is a pro-abortion stance.
What
right
I do
here.
know as a physician is if you're going to make it if the litmus test is the heart's beating, then really make it the heart beating.
Mm-hmm.
Don't make some surrogate version of it when cells are having electrical path. That's not what the average person thinks.
Right.
The average person is envisaging a little acorn heart beating in there. That's not what's going
not
on.
what it is.
That's 6 weeks. And I think the rule that most Americans seem to support is if the child was viable outside the womb, then you don't want to kill that child. Mm-hmm. If the child was not going to be able to survive outside the mom, then the mom runs the show. This is a hard issue for everybody because I get it, but just being logical about it,
It's
if
not
you
a hard
think that
issue.
the moment of conception you've got a life, then why would you even wait 6 weeks? Right? Then an in vitro fertilized egg is still a life.
Then you would have to get rid of everything like Plan B.
First of all, a heartbeat is more logically defensible than viability. Viability is basically eugenics, and that's kind of what he supports here is eugenics, because he talked about incest exceptions, which is eugenics. So viability basically means that a person is a person when they have medical treatment available, if they're rich. So viable in the United States is not the same thing as viable in Zimbabwe. So if you use viability as a personhood standard, which, by the way, viability keeps going closer and closer. Now, I do believe there is eventually a max that we can reach with the prenatal viability. There is a maximum that we can reach, particularly as it relates to lung development, because that's the last thing to develop. But otherwise, it's wholly dependent on medical technology. Medical technology should not determine when a life is a life. That's called, that's basically a form of eugenics. Specifically as it relates to rich versus poor, who has better medical treatment available. That is not a tenable standard for when life begins. A heartbeat actually is. I'm not saying it's the most precise, but at least it's more logically defensible than what he's proposing. But he's proposing that we have a middle ground and just not care about the issue and then move on. That's what he's going to say right here.
Everything goes away. Well, Plan B would be considered criminal under some of these laws.
I mean, as a doctor, they said that they're going to lock doctors up if they perform these abortions. How did that make you feel? And would you still perform it? Because some doctors said, I'm still going to do it regardless in Alabama.
I think your primary responsibility is to your patient, and the reason they say they're going to lock doctors up is because people don't want to say they're going to lock the moms up.
I do, though.
Because no one wants that.
Right.
I do.
But is this really the way we want to spend our time? There's so much,
Right.
so much we
I
got
don't
So
to
many
think
do.
other
so
things
in the
we have
world,
to.
right.
Let's worry about the kids that are here.
Exactly.
That we
We
have
have
to take
so
care
much
of.
we got to do already to take care of each other. To start picking fights on this, I always wonder about it. I got the same. It happens periodically. There are these moral issues that almost on purpose are inflamed, and people are different.
Like the fur ban.
Which band?
They're trying to ban the fur, and people are saying no banning of the fur from the animals.
They don't
New
want,
York.
they don't
That's
want
in
people
New
to
York.
shave their pubics.
Well, I think people create some of these battles on purpose. And I think the reason we have a federal system where you have, 50 states is if you don't want to have babies in Alabama, or if you do want to, rather, and want to ban abortion, then make that loud and clear. But there's going to be a big sucking down of businesses leaving there.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the reasons that the country is the way it is. And
You haven't seen that yet, so his instincts are dead wrong. So he has bad political instincts. First of all, that's just true. He has bad political instincts. Trump actually is not terribly far away from where he is, or at least wasn't in 2016, but Trump had far superior political instincts. That is the difference. Trump knows how to cater to a base, which is why he effectively was the most pro-life president that we've seen, certainly in my lifetime, probably in American history, post the issue of abortion rising up. So that would mean that more pro-life than Eisenhower and a few other people. So what he said was wrong. Abortion is about when life begins, and in America we believe that we can just kill people on a whim, either there's a person or it's not. He's saying we don't know, so it doesn't matter. Whereas other people would say we do know, and therefore it's preeminent. It is the most important issue. That is like the number one single issue voter issue is abortion. I believe the second one is guns. So these are issues that drive people to the polls, and these are his political instincts, which are really bad. And you've seen him try to backpedal on this. Well, let's see how much longer this goes. Then I think I'll pivot to that, actually.
I don't want New York sensibilities in Alabama. They don't want it either. And we certainly don't want to adopt people's sensibilities from South Dakota and in Los Angeles. We're supposed to be a little different from each other. That's the crazy thing about it. We're supposed to celebrate our variations, our differences. Human society got here because we're different. I mean, and I'll just give you one little idea, just moving to the medical side. There's actually a genetic predisposition to disgust. So some people are more likely to disgust than others. Now, why does that matter? What is disgust about? Disgust is you don't want to be near smells or odors, et cetera. Why? Because, things that smell bad and have and look bad are often infected. So some people are hardwired to look for infected things and keep them away. So they build walls to protect them. Now, what infects us besides infections, right? Well, ideas infect us. So they build ideas to keep walls, rather, to keep ideas out of as well, because they know it can be dangerous to society. Similarly, there's some people who genetically don't mind bad smells and bad odors or ideas. So they don't build any walls at all. Who's better? Well, you want both, right? You want some people saying, well, that might be bad. Let's be careful here. And other people saying, oh, come on now. We got to advance ourselves and grow.
I don't want a single pro-abortion politician to exist. They contribute nothing to solutions for our country. They are wrong on absolutely every single issue. Every single issue. Guns, free speech, taxes, energy, pulling out of Afghanistan. I'm just kidding. But yeah, they're wrong. And that's not to say that the people who are pro-life are right on every single issue, because there's a lot of variance even in that camp. But the people who are pro-abortion are generally wrong on everything. Everything. They have nothing to contribute. Our society would be so much better off if we cut off the left wing and took away their ability to vote and, have the adults in charge. That would make our society a lot better overnight. So let's actually skip over to, that was in May 21st, 2019. Let's skip over to, I believe this was, no, we're not going to do this clip. We're going to use this clip, actually.
Dr. Oz is running for office. In fact, he is a Senate candidate in Pennsylvania. And during a recent interview with Fox News, he was a little flustered when he was asked about his thoughts in regard to reproductive rights. Let's watch.
So this is a video of Young Turks making fun of Dr. Oz. I should have had this ready, but I'm calling an audible on going through with this video because it's bad. It's bad.
Watch.
What is your position as both a doctor and a senatorial candidate on when life begins? When should we draw the line when abortion is legal?
As a doctor, I appreciate the sanctity of life. And for that reason, I'm strongly pro-life. With the 3 exceptions I've mentioned, that's how I would vote.
And when does that life begin?
You know, again, if I'm pro-life, then it's a decision that comes back to the sanctity of when you think life does begin. And I believe it begins when you're in the mother's womb.
When you're in the mother's womb, but that carries you all the way up to 9 months of pregnancy.
You see how like dumb that answer was? Life begins, oh, it's somewhere in the mother's womb, like 9 months of pregnancy. You know, 8 if you have a preemie like I did the first time around. But 9 months, yeah, it begins somewhere in there. It's somewhere in there. It's like he really just said that because he doesn't have an answer. He's so strongly pro-life that he can't answer the question, when does life begin? And this Fox News host looks dumbfounded. It's like, who just came on here? Like, this guy's a serious candidate?
No, of course not.
That was
Life's
a
already
long
started
pause,
when you're
too.
in your mother's womb. But it's a rat hole to get trapped in the different ways of talking about it. We need, as a nation, to make sure the Constitution is appropriately followed, and people like me, and you may be in the same camp, who are pro-life, have our feelings respected. And this is something that should not be taken away from us by judiciary legislating from the bench.
Yeah, but that's also something that's going to have to be legislated, and that answer is going to have to be given specifically.
I wish I had the full clip of that, but I do not. Because I wonder if YouTube's actually shadow banning some of the searching on Dr. Oz and his pro-abortion views. So let's just flashback. It's clear that he's not pro-life, or let alone in the position that I hold, which is more like criminalize and abolish and criminalize abortion. That's the Christian biblical position, is to criminalize and abolish, or abolish and criminalize. That's the Christian position. He is so far from that he's not even within the boundaries of the Republican Party. So that is untenable. He cannot be supported by a Republican because he held a Democrat position on one of the key issues, and him being pro-abortion will cost him the Senate nomination, or not the Senate nomination, but Mitt Romney did not carry Virginia when he ran pro-abortion ads in that state saying that he wasn't going to do away with Roe v. Wade. Well, he didn't end up carrying that state for that reason. And Virginia was in a tenable time where they could have, if the Republicans actually cared about keeping that state, they could have kept that state. But instead, Mitt Romney did that, and then they sacked the gubernatorial candidate after a year later. So, I digress. Either way, Dr. Oz is a very weak candidate to put out in the general election because his pro-abortion stance will turn off so many conservative voters, as it should, because we shouldn't be voting for the next Mitt Romney. The Republicans would have been better off had the Democrats gotten someone elected in Utah than Republicans, because at least in 2024, a Republican could surely take that seat back. A better one than Romney. Instead, Romney's probably going to be in there for life because ousting an incumbent senator in a primary is near impossible. I'm going to start the clip here. Now we're going to move into Dr. Oz promoting transgenderism and basically platforming quack doctors that abuse children, as well as
Challenging your
parents.
beliefs about what it means to be male or female. The word you'll hear today is transgender. Transgender. It describes people whose sex on the outside doesn't match who they are on the inside.
This is as loud as I
Now
can get the
imagine your
clip.
child is transgender. What would you do? Our lives as parents are first defined by the words, it's a girl or it's a boy. Could you make a decision to let your child live as the other sex, even alter their body? It's an area of intense debate. Today you'll meet families coping with this astonishing reality.
What does it mean to be a boy? What does it mean to be a girl? Those two simple questions are infinitely complex and gut-wrenching for parents of children who are born transgender.
I'm a girl, and
No one is born a transvestite.
8-year-old Josie was born Joseph. Physically, she's a boy. But from the time she could talk, Josie knew she was a girl. Her sex on the outside...
Time Okay, so language, we're talking under 2 years old is when a child can talk. I imagine maybe 2 complete sentences. So we're talking about a 2-year-old here.
Didn't match how she felt on the inside. And that's how every transgender child feels. Children like Josie...
I just got to pause right here. I have a 2-year-old daughter. No way can a 2-year-old understand... No way does a 2-year-old fully comprehend what a boy versus a girl is. They know there's a difference, but they don't fully comprehend the difference. Again, this is Dr. Oz is promoting this. This is like back in 2010, I believe.
As early as 2 or 3.
Especially based off
This
the aspect ratio. It's a long time ago.
As rare as you might think. It's estimated that 3 million Americans believe they were born the wrong sex. Transgender shakes up all of our ideas about what makes us male or female. Does gender come from our anatomy or from our thoughts and feelings? While science looks for answers, what are parents of transgender children to do? More and more parents, like Josie's, are allowing their children to live as the opposite sex. In some cases, they're going as far as providing hormone blockers to prevent the onset of puberty, to buy their children more time to figure out the next step. Others heed the warning of psychiatrists who caution that children who may be transgender don't always grow up to be transgender adults. There's no...
And by don't always, meaning if they're not put on puberty blockers, almost never. Like, it's like that bad. But once they do get on this pharmaceutical path and pipeline, they basically go through with it. That's what it's designed to do. It's a pipeline. It's not even a slide or a slippery slope. It's a pipeline. You're playing chutes and ladders with your pee-pee.
No easy answer. With science and psychology only starting to explore this complex subject, what's the right way to nurture a transgender child? Let's meet a family living with that very question every day. Vanessa's here with her daughter, Josie. Welcome to the show.
Just a point of order. They pre-screen their guest. They pre-screen their answers to these questions. So Dr. Oz is... You know, the way a show like this works is everything's kind of scripted. Like, they already know what everyone's going to say. If they are given a microphone and able to speak on this show, the answer is already expected.
Vanessa, your husband, Joseph's in the military. He's not able to join us today.
Correct.
You know, early on...
So no dad in the picture. There's no dad in the picture because he's in the military, which... I caught that on the second time I watched this video. So, no dad in the picture. He's in the military. So, the mother is basically raising him alone. And that's not going so well. I wonder what that military dad was thinking when his wife, presumably his wife, was telling him this crap.
You probably
because
had a sense
listen
that
to how
different.
whimsical
and when did
this
you
sounds.
recognize that Josie was transgender?
It was during a regular well baby exam. The pediatrician was looking at her. He got really quiet and just sort of watched her for a while. And he brought up a term, gender identity disorder. Mm-hmm. Excuse me, what's that? He said, you know, like transgender. I was like, could you spell that for me? I had no idea what he was saying.
That's when you learned about it.
That is.
How are you, Josie?
Good.
She has a lot of spark.
So this would have been about mid-2000s that doctors were pushing this on children. That's just a point of order for a timeline here. And this is during a baby exam? And a doctor just looks at a kid and says, I think he's transgender. And the parent's like, okay. That's literally what they're describing here. That is the process of what they're describing. Okay.
Sparked her, I gotta say.
She does indeed.
Do you remember when your parents thought you were a boy?
A little bit.
Talk to me about that a little bit.
He doesn't.
Well, what do you remember?
Like, how did it make you feel when I used to take you and get your hair cut off at the barber shop on base?
It made me very angry.
You did not like your haircut. Why not?
Because I'm a girl, not a boy.
Notice how the mom is coaching him to answer every question. Like, you went to the haircut example. How many kids don't like getting their haircut at all? You know, because you have to kind of sit back, have your head up. I know that was an issue when I was a kid, getting a haircut. And now I just, put that off as long as I can as an adult. I wasn't always like that. But, again, these are common things that they're trying to make a mountain out of a molehill, like literally, when it comes to this. By literally, I mean figuratively, but...
Yeah.
But how do you do the basic things? I mean, how do you decide how to dress Josie? How do you decide how to talk to people about what's going on?
Right. Yeah, those are great questions, and they were really big struggles for us. I had no idea. Here I am trying to put her into, the little G.I. Joe outfits to go to school like all the other little boys on base, and she was fighting me and crying and having fits and demanding that she'd wear the pink leggings and the denim little skirts that she wanted to wear. When we'd go to the stores, she'd go to that, gravitate towards the girls section, not the little boys section that I wanted to put on her.
This also sounds way after the doctor tried to convince you that your boy was a girl. I'm so confused by the timeline because they're not explaining it coherently. This is entirely grooming, and I'm not sure how much longer I really need to go off, because then he has a doctor kind of explain the process, but I kind of want to just stick to this more scripted interview part because that's, Dr. Oz's view. But then he has another child that's being groomed into this lifestyle on the show, and those parents are like, we want the body to match the mind. We can't change the mind, but we can change the body, so we can control the body. It's like that's literally how bad those parents are. At first I thought the dad, who was actually there, was just so like demoralized and clearly not leading, but he's just weak and supportive. So this case, we had an absent father. In the other case, we had a weak and supportive father. It's just interesting. So this is who Dr. Oz is. He's pro-grooming children. Like, I would not let my children near Dr. Oz. Neither should you, because this guy is pro-diddler. Additionally, Dr. Oz is pro-abortion. His stance is untenable for a Republican candidate. I don't think any Christian can justify voting for him because, first of all, he's basically a Democrat. Democrat is more than just a political label. And the thing about the Republican Party is, no one tries to subvert the Democrat Party to make it more conservative. That just doesn't happen. What happens is you got Democrats that are in their legacy, and then the party moves left of them, like Joe Manchin. And even Kirsten Sinema isn't really that... again, if you looked at her views on a bunch of issues, like how she was kind of pro-Taliban and stuff like that, again, she was a very weak Senate candidate in 2018, or is it 2020? But she was running against an even weaker Senate candidate. So, I don't know, maybe she's a fluke. And again, his pro-abortion views are basically the same as Tulsi Gabbard's pro-abortion views. So these aren't natural Republicans. They're not even close to being Republicans. And this is a Democrat who's running as a Republican. That's what this is. So anyway, there's no reason a Christian can justify voting for it. Now, if you live in Pennsylvania and want to find out who we do recommend you check out evangelicaldarkweb.org and the companion article that I'll get linked in the description below. You can check that out. Also subscribe to the channel if you want to support content like this. evangelicaldarkweb.org/join is a Patreon-like section to support the research and writing and ministry that this is. Have a blessed day, and I'll catch you on the next one.